Stop. You're about to waste hours and expensive yarn unless you know these 3 secrets about swatching that will guarantee that your project will turn out exactly the way you want it every single time. But first, if you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful and informative, please subscribe down below. Thank you. All right, today I'm going to share with you 3 secrets about swatching. But first, I'm going to tell you a story. You see, initially when I started knitting and crocheting years and years ago, I saw that little blurb about swatching and I was like, nah, I don't need to do that. I kind of know my gauge. It's pretty similar to the pattern. I'm just going to start. Of course, little did I know that many times that led to unsuccessful attempts and things turned out bigger or smaller than I expected. Until I put 2 and 2 together. The swatch is going to tell you how your project is going to turn out before you even start the project and waste your time. As I've grown in my skills, I've started to use it, and there was this one time I was creating a sweater, and swatching saved my sweater. And I'm going to tell you how. You see, I had some yarn that I wanted to use. I found the pattern, found some yarn that I really wanted to use, but of course, the pattern called for holding a mohair, a lace weight, and a fingering weight yarn together in the pattern, and that is definitely not my style. So I was like, okay, well, maybe if I use a sport weight or what I found was a worsted weight yarn, maybe it'll work. But I was like, I'm not so sure. So I swatched. So I made this swatch right here. And this is the I swatched in pattern. And I realized, wait a second, this is a little too thick for the type of sweater that I want. And I'm not feeling this for what I'm making. Thank goodness this only took me a half hour instead of spending 6 hours and finding out that I'm going to frog it all. So I found some different yarn in a fingering weight. And I tend to have a very loose tension. So my fingering weight yarn actually worked exactly the way I wanted it to. And I have a better drape on the fabric, and I really like how it looks. You see the difference between these two? It's a little thicker. This one has more drape, it's thinner. And this 2 hours or less that it took me to figure this out saved my sweater because I chose this yarn and I'm really happy with how it's turned out so far. I'm in the middle of knitting this sweater. But this is all to illustrate that swatching is super important. And today I'm going to share with you 3 secrets that I have learned about swatching that you definitely need to follow. Now, what is a swatch? Well, a swatch is just a little teeny tiny test of what the pattern is going to look like on the yarn that you've chosen to use with the needles that you want to use. Now, of course, there's lots of factors involved in swatching. There's needle, the type of yarn, and how you personally knit or crochet, that tension. Secret number 1, your swatch doesn't have to be 4 inches. And you're like, what? Every pattern I read says so-and-so stitches in so-and-so rows equals 4 inches. 4 inches of fabric takes a lot of work. I mean, that's a good hour, maybe more of your time. Well, I've realized that swatching doesn't need to be that 4 inches. We can do a little bit of math and find out how many stitches we might need in 1 inch. And then knit something a little bit smaller, and that'll give us the gauge that we need. Smaller. I really like to make these small ones, especially for projects. And the reason that I like the smaller ones more is because they take up less yarn, and you can knit them up faster or crochet them up faster than it would take to make some of these bigger ones. But of course, in your pattern, everything says 4 inches. So many rows in 4 inches, so many stitches in 4 inches. So how do we convert 4 inches into something that's a little bit smaller? Well, let me show you just a little bit of simple math. So I have it written out here. What we're going to do is take our stitch count and we're going to divide it by 4. And that's going to equal the number of stitches that are going to be in 1 inch. So we probably want to cast on about that many. And then we're going to take our row count from our pattern and divide it by 4. And that's going to equal the number of rows in 1 inch. So we're going to want to go about this many rows. Now, if you're working in plain stockinette stitch, then you're going to want a garter edge and maybe a garter beginning and a garter end. So then you're going to take the number of stitches from right here and you're going to add about 6. I like to do 3 stitches on each side of my edge. So that's going to equal the number of stitches you cast on. You may also want to do a few more rows in like a garter edge to start out with and to end. So you would make sure that you do a few more rows than this right here. And that is going to get you a small little size like this. Very cute, isn't it? Now, how do I measure this so that I can convert it into the gauge on the pattern and make sure that I have the right gauge? Well, I have a cool handy dandy tool like this. It's got my 1 inch and my 1 inch. I can also use just a plain ruler. And what we're going to do is we're going to count the number of stitches in 1 inch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to say 6. 6 inches and 6 stitches in that 1 inch. And I'm counting the V's. We can also count the rows. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. So what you're going to do is do that math in reverse. We're going to take the number of stitches that we have in 1 inch. We're going to times it by 4 to get the actual stitch count from the pattern. And we're going to do it in reverse here. We're going to take the number of rows in 1 inch. We're going to times it by 4, and we're going to get the number of rows that we need from our pattern. And so that is how you convert an itty bitty swatch into the gauge according to your pattern. Secret number 2. Swatching enables you to be more flexible with the yarn that you're going to use. So let's say we found the perfect pattern and we have some yarn in our stash that we want to use. It's the right quantity for what we want, but it's a different gauge or it's a different type of yarn. For instance, in my sweater story, the sweater was made with a mohair and a fingering held together, but I wanted to use a single yarn. Thank goodness I swatched, because then I can figure out what size yarn I wanted to use. And the same goes for you. Let's say you've got a sport weight yarn, but your pattern is for a fingering weight yarn, or maybe it's a sport weight and a worsted weight yarn that you want to interchange. Or this has happened to me before. I found a pattern that I love. It's a little bit older, and they used a yarn that is no longer made. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do how do I find the yarn that I need? That's where swatching comes in. You're going to look very carefully at that yarn, find out what its contents is, what its weight is, maybe the yardage, and then you're going to find a yarn that you really love, that you think is pretty close, and then you're going to do a swatch. And of course, you can adjust up and down your needle size and figure out how it's going to work. And so swatching allows you to be so much more flexible and creative when you're creating and when you're knitting and crocheting. Tip number 3. Swatching gives you a little peek at what the finished product is going to look like. Now, I've actually really enjoyed this, especially when I started writing patterns, because I wanted to see what the finished pattern was going to look like, the stitches were going to look like before I even start doing the entire project. Because I like to make my own projects when I right patterns. And so, for instance, in this little swatch right here, I wanted to see what this little eyelet crochet pattern was going to look like before I even started the project. And man, that is super cute, isn't it? Or maybe I wanted to find out what the drape of my sweater pattern is going to be like with the yarn that I chose. And so I made a swatch like this. And so you can kind of see it's what did the stitches do? What does it look like? Now, when I was designing a cowl pattern and wanted to look at cables, what does the cable look like? And so I did something here. I also swatched this because I wanted to find what does this yarn look like if I do kind of a lace stitch. And it turns out I really didn't like the lace stitch, but I did like how the cables looked. Swatching tells you so much about what your finished product is going to look like that it's going to build excitement. And that's excitement that you can take with you throughout the whole project so that you finish and you get to enjoy that project for many years to come. You don't have to waste your time any longer. If you follow my 3 secrets of swatching, you don't have to do a full 4 inches. Swatching allows you to be flexible, and swatching gives you a peek and adds to your excitement. Then you're off to a great start and you're guaranteed to have the project that you imagined. Thanks for watching, and be sure to comment below. What are you making and what are you swatching today? Bye.